朽ち果てるように燃ゆる月暁に沈みゆく
Akame Ga Kill is a 24-episode anime series produced by Studio White Fox. The story follows Tatsumi, a young warrior from a small country town who's come to the capital to get money and power in the military to save his family back home. One day, though, while staying with a wealthy family who saved him, he is attacked by Night Raid, a group of outlaw assassins who are there to kill the family. He protects the family until he finds out that there's a dark sadistic secret to that family, before then joining Night Raid and killing the family along with them. Once he joined Night Raid, he sets out to destroy all the corruption within the capital. Granted, this story is actually rather unique, not in the sense of the story itself, but how it's presented. It almost reminds you of Gecko State from Eureka 7, how they're seen to be outlaws, because Night Raid actually murders people, and they don't try to color code it like, well, oh, we're doing it for justice. No, they flat out say it. Yes, what they are doing is murder, yet they're doing it for the greater good, and that's what makes this story a bit unique from other things. I mean, there are actually quite a few pros to this story. I mean, let's look on a few things right here. First of all, there's plenty of meaningful character death in this show. People die a lot. Like, if you thought Attack on Titan had a lot of deaths, it has nothing compared to Akame Ga Kill. I mean, literally, these people had more screen time than anybody who ever died in Attack on Titan. Actual screen time, like, you wouldn't think that they would die. Of course, this points out one of the show's flaws, too. Its comedy. Its comedy kind of conflicts with the show. It kind of gives you a sense that things are going to turn out differently. Yeah, I mean, that makes it unexpected and unpredictable, but at the same time, it conflicts with the entire, vibe of the show. You have plenty of comedy, you have a little bit of comedy here, a little bit of comedy here, boom, character dies, supposed to be a sad moment, next episode, we all go back to normal. On top of that, there's just some flat-out illogic in the show. First of all, there's the philosophy with these weapons they use called Imperial Arms. This philosophy dictates that no matter what, if two people with Imperial Arms, the special weapons of the show, get in a fight, one of them is going to die at the end. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of goes without saying no matter what, though. When two people are fighting to the death, they're going to probably end up killing one another either way. One of them's going to die. On top of that, another piece of illogic in this show is the fact that almost all the soldiers use swords and axes and your typical medieval weapons when there are guns in the show. And I'm not just talking your one-shot muskets. There are fully automatic machine guns in this show, yet all the soldiers are parading around on horses and fighting with swords, except for like a select few. I mean, it's not like it's something that's rare considering how you have the technology to have machine guns. Why aren't there more guns in the show, period? It almost feels like they should have just not had guns. I mean, not every gun in the show is an Imperial arm. Some guns are regular. Heck, there's freaking missiles in the show. At select moments, but they're in there. I feel like every way you look at it, its story is hit or miss. There's some interesting concepts. It's got a nice premise. It's got some illogic to it, though, like the Imperial arms philosophy, like if two people fight, one's gonna die. Well, no shit. Also, on top of that, I mean, like, I feel like there should have been more guns, but there wasn't. I mean, it didn't make any sense. You have the technology for guns. You'd think all your soldiers are using guns by now, but they're not. The Imperial arms are different. Like, each Imperial arm has, like, a special ability to it that would justify you using a sword over a gun as long as your sword's an Imperial arm, but it's not always. I may rant, but I really did like the story. It wasn't a great story. Like, the story was probably the weakest element of the whole show. But, even so, some of the comedy may have conflicted, there may have been some illogic, but I liked the story. Meaningful death, it was good. Sometimes the pacing was too fast, but they were only minor problems. And, I also kind of feel like the show did what Naruto did. Not like directly, but the show kind of did to assassins what Naruto does to ninjas. When you look at ninjas in Naruto, you're like, that is not a real ninja. That is unorthodox. When you look at an assassin in Akame ga Kill, it's not a real assassin. Let's be honest with ourselves. Now, let's be honest with ourselves again. The characters of this show. They're hit or miss. There's a lot of characters. Like, it's a 24 episode series, and the amount of characters in it are just ridiculous. To be honest with you, the main ones that I could see, which would be the character Mine, the character Tatsumi, who is our main protagonist, and the title character Akame, they could all be summed up in a few words. Tatsumi, main protagonist. Akame, otaku bait and title character. And finally, Mine, tsundere, one word. Yeah, they weren't horrible characters, but they kind of fit their archetypes a little bit too much to the T and are boring sometimes. But they do have their moments as characters. They're not completely boring, and I did like a lot of the developments that some of them went through. There's a lot of emotion in this series based around the characters if I'm going to give this series anything. On top of that, I do have a couple characters that I really, really like. My three favorite characters of the series are actually Bulat, Esdeath, and Chelsea. Bulat's kind of like a homosexual, funny, yet big brotherly type of character. He's very funny. Like, his comedy was some of the funniest comedy in the show. Granted, it wasn't around for very long, but he was one of the better characters. On top of that, Esdeath, she's the general of the opposing force, basically the force fighting for the capital, and she is twisted. I guess that's why I like her character, because she's unique, she's twisted, and she's really, really evil. I mean, like, when we speak of evil, she is it. Though she does have some interesting character developments that kind of make you feel for her by the end, and the fact that they were even able to make you kind of care about her by the end of the series is impressive, and that's kind of why I like her character. And brief mention of Chelsea. She's one of the characters who are part of Night Raid, and she doesn't look like it by her design, but she's actually kind of one of the more genuine assassin type characters. She fits the role of an assassin more than any other character in the show, and I'm going to stand by that. The animation for this show was, well, good, actually. Not even just kind of good. It was really good. Was it outstanding? Was it amazing? Was it like Fate Zero good? No, it wasn't. It obviously was not. But apart from that, Fate Zero didn't have a lot of action in it, for what it's worth. The thing that's impressive about the animation for this show is just the sheer number of fight scenes. There are so many fight scenes, like, it's ridiculous. I've seen more action in this anime, that has 24 episodes than most other 24 episoder animes out there that have action in it. It was rather impressive. It was rather lucrative. Now we're talking about the soundtrack. First off, Japanese dub, it's solid, there's not much to it. I feel like the characters' emotions were displayed really well, though I can't really critique a Japanese dub. No English dub, but Sentai Filmworks has the rights, and based on how popular this series is, I'm betting it's getting an English dub here, eventually. And as far as the music goes, there wasn't really anything outstanding. My favorite track from the entire soundtrack was opening to Liar Mask. It really was my favorite song from the whole show. Granted, I don't really remember the rest of the songs. I remember the first opening. I remember it, and that's it. That's where it stops. I remember it. Apart from everything else, I don't remember any of the music that was played throughout the show. It all did its job. Like, it had every scene adjusted the way it needed to be, but none of the music stood out on its own, and that was the problem with it. Not much of a problem, but still a problem. It was boring, it was forgettable. Loved the second opening, though. I mean, even when I went onto YouTube to listen to it again, like right after I finished the show, which was just yesterday, I noticed, like, it was above the first opening as far as search results go, which must say something. A lot of people must think that about the second opening. Moving on to the final verdict for this show. It is obvious that the weakest part of this show is its plot. Apart from its premise, and its execution in a lot of ways, actually, let me rephrase that. The execution of its premise. Apart from the execution of its premise, there's a lot missing from this story. There's a ton of illogic, just nonsense inside of the story, especially while you're watching it. I mean, a lot of the characters, too, they almost seem like they're superhuman. Regular people will get crushed, yet they will survive like these just crazy incidents. And not to mention, like I said, with the guns and versus the swords, like people having swords instead of guns, as well as the philosophy with the Imperial arms, that one person if two Imperial arms users fight, then one of them will end up dead. Well, that goes without saying for any fight to the death between two people. They're probably going to die. So that's really all I had to say about it. And even then, that philosophy never, even stood up to itself all the way through the show. There was a couple of times where they would be going at it, and, they would both get out alive. So that philosophy didn't really work. But the plot really does have a lot of enjoyable things about it. It's got a pool of cons, that's for sure, but it has some darn memorable pros to it. Not to mention, I really liked the characters, and the animation was pretty good. I mean, it really held its own against other shows this season. Heck, you could argue it has better animation than Kill la Kill, even considering where Kill la Kill goes up and down all over the ratio with its animation. This show stayed consistent all the way through, with good fight scenes, nice colors. I mean, what's not to like about the animation? My own personal enjoyment of the show is much higher than what I'd actually rate it. Yeah, I mean, apart from that, like I said, with the plot and the soundtrack are both a bit mediocre at times, but it's got plenty of pros to make up for all of that. I mean, this show was just so close. Like, when it comes to me, when I express what a great anime is, I would usually rank it, about an 8 out of 10 or above, which is hard for almost any show to get into. It had really great characters, it had good freaking animation, and on top of that, my own personal enjoyment of the show was very high. I actually ranked it a 9.25 out of 10, but both the plot and the soundtrack were below 7 out of 10 for me, which means I'm actually rating this show a 7.75 out of 10. Like I said, it was the plot and the soundtrack that drug this show down. It had a lot of illogic, a lot of overused like cliches as well. And not to mention, the soundtrack was very forgettable. Like the characters, but that's about all. Tell me though, what did you think of Akame Got Killed? Would you rate it as highly as I did? Maybe you wouldn't. Tell me in the comments below. Stay awesome.
朽ち果てるように燃ゆる月